These are really great vases. They're like 3 put together. This whole collection is called Silo. Some of them have that silvery beaded texture. Some of them are just this platinum. These are a little bit squatter. You can see they're a little bit shorter. Great as a combination because this actually pulls that exact color of the beading on there. So you can do it as a varying finishes, and it could work very well as well. Those are in pairs, and then there's 1, 2, and 3 grouping. Now these are interconnected, so you just have to fill in one hole. It fills the whole thing, which is also a very, very nice perk. In this particular design, what I'm going to do is create something that looks really quite big and almost heavy because of the thickness of these fiber sticks are such that it looks like it's really a heavy stick, but it really isn't. It's like, as the name says, fiber stick. It's very light, and so it doesn't impose a lot of problem with weight. And so what I'm going to do is just sort of create a simple armature that's kind of sort of random, kind of neat. And then weave Metalino through it and tie it in so that you can do something, again, very simple that doesn't use a lot of product. So I'm just going to sort of start to tie this together so that it creates a grid into which I will then tie Metalino into. So obviously just tie in this one spot seems to do the trick there. And then I'm going to take just a few pieces of Metalino at a time, some of which I will actually put into the vase so that it starts with something. Like this one here, I'm not going to really end up using it as a source for flowers. I'm going to probably use it as just slipping bear grass through, that's all. So I'm going to use that, and if I kind of flex it like this, this actually helps push this out so that it stays more out instead of bringing it in. So you have some control over how the Metalino flows by the way you use this material. So this is kind of what I'm going to do, just kind of sweep around, and by tying into different places, you're going to get different flex on the finish of the Metalino. And you could adjust it, a little bit of it afterwards too, because after I tie like this, I can still pull one of these so that I can get a little bit more tightness to one and then the other. I'm going to take another grouping of it, maybe 2 or 3 at a time. This one seems to have a little break in it, so we'll put that aside. But let's see, we'll just start with another set. And at the beginning, you just have to get it started so that you're not worried so much about how it's starting to shape up just yet. But each time you tie, where it's tied is going to determine how the whole thing is going to shape up. I'm going to go wrap around, and then at this point, I'm going to bring this up and tie into this, because what this will do is pull this up as I pull the end over to the other side. Now I only tied it to 2 of them, so one of them is going to flop a little bit, which is exactly the desired effect that I want. So I'm going to bring it around a little bit tighter and then bring it down to the back. So this way I was able to develop a little bit more of the depth that is part of what I want on the front side. And then next set of Metalino, I'll try to achieve a little bit more of that depth on the back side. Now, in the design that I have right here, the flowers are such that they're very short and it doesn't require the height that this armature is setting up to be, but this makes it possible that if I wanted to use something much taller, like the flowers, if I wanted to use anthurium, for instance, that is much longer, what I could do is simply still use this structure, and that's what this upper layer is for, so that if I wanted to use something that's much taller, there's area to design into. So I'm going to just sort of trim out these little extras and sort of clean that mechanics up a little bit. By using that silver wire, it makes it cohesive to the containers themselves. And by cleaning this up, it makes it mechanically much more neater. But I've created a structure that's going to allow for flow of different material, different flowers. Now, just as I said earlier, what I want to do now is just sort of pull and tug so that I can get a little bit more air in some of these spots. Like if I do this, whoops, I slipped it right out. Let's go back and get that back in there just a little bit. Yeah, maybe this is not the one to do. Although, let's pull. Let's do that. Pull that in a little bit, and you get a little bit more separation there. Likewise, you're gonna get the same sort of thing if you just pull and push. So you can get a little bit more variation so that it's not all bands of 3. But some areas you want it to be band of 3 because, like if I take berry grass, for instance, and I put it in, say right into there, what I want to be able to do is from there I can thread it between here so that it holds it in place. See how it holds it in place? It doesn't go anywhere. And then I could slip it in between like these two here so that it stays right in that spot where I want it to be, where I wanted it to be. And so that's really the whole purpose of this whole armature, is that it allows the exact placement. Like here, for instance, these two, if I separate it out and bring it in, see how it sort of just gets stuck in that spot. And then if I bring it around and slip it in between these two, then it stays in place. It just allows for the exact placement of that flow, which is very, very important, because without the armature, there's no way that any of this would stay just exactly where I want it to go. And so that's the purpose of this whole exercise, this whole mechanic, is that it gives you the exact placement of what you want your material to do. So this is kind of what it's for. Now, here's a case in point. I think in one of the other episodes I showed how you could bring the stems up a little bit. In this case, if I want this to be much taller, in this case I used it as they came, the short stem, and tucked it in there, which is fine. But if I wanted this to be taller, I could simply fill this with water and then insert this cut end in and tuck it right down. Actually, you want this to be so that, let's just sort of puncture this through so it could be a little bit longer, and just puncture it all the way down so that it doesn't just start in the middle of the stem, but do this, and then it's in the water tube. And so I'm going to just sort of design into this right here so that you could have stems that are much, much taller. And so this way you can extend the stem and get design much higher. And this does have a water source, so this is just one of the methods that we use to create tall or short with this particular flower.